so I want to talk about shortcuts in our little Ocean's 11 scenario where they're going to go pull Trinity out. And they're going to go up, through the thing, and they're going to pull her back out. They just completely do not bring up how the ship, whatever it's called, the Nemesis or whatever it is, Meminescent, I don't know, that ship that Captain Bugs Bunny drives. They don't talk about how the ship is going to get into the machine area, because they say that their little friends can't go back in, so they have to take the machine and drop it off. But then, when we cut to Trinity, it's not just Morpheus in there. It's Trinity and the machines and Bugs Bunny and Priyanka Chopra, the woman from Quantico. She's there too, and we'll get to the Lord of the Rings well scene with the Ents or Cate Blanchett. Lots of meetings in Lord of the Rings. Everybody's there around Trinity, but they don't explain how those people got in there. I mean, they talked about how Morpheus was going to get up there, but they didn't talk about how anybody else was going to get in there. And then they don't show how they get out. They show how Morpheus leaves, but they don't show how they get Trinity's body out of there and back onto the ship. So it just doesn't make any sense. If the analyst, not the architect, right? If the analyst's entire plan hinges on Neo and Trinity, there are two things that need to happen. Number one, constantly surrounded by individuals who are in league with you, cameras always on those individuals no matter what. It's a computer program. You can always see what's happening in the zeros and the ones. In that big resurrection tower, the big white tower, the ivory tower that Neo and Trinity sleep across from in their separate beds, in this section, you got to have cameras. You got to have a robot there that you trust, a machine that just watches to make sure that they stay in their little pink puddle. And that's its job. That's the robot's job. It's like, okay, you're going to watch Neo and you're going to watch Trinity. And if they get Neo out and you know that Neo's gone and he's back in Io, not Zion, Io. If you're going to do that, if you lose Neo, then you definitely post a guard on Trinity. You definitely say, okay, here's this. This whole fate choice, he's going to have to come back because he's never going to leave Trinity. I mean, I'll tell you what I thought was going to happen. Because it wouldn't have been better. It just would have been different. I thought that Neo and Trinity had decided to go back into the Matrix because Zion is like a sucky place to live. I know that Trinity died, and I know that Neo, sort of ended whatever was happening there. But I thought that, if they're talking about resurrections, I thought, then they probably willingly went back into the Matrix. I thought that would be great. They talked about how, in the second film, they talk about how this sort of thing has happened over and over and over again. So I thought they were going to be 5,000 years in the future or something. Not just 60. It's a weird number that it's 60. I thought that was where they were going with it. But they did something worse, which is what I should have expected. I should have expected that they were going to make the worse decision. Not the worst decision, just the worse decision. What else happened in this movie? I decided for this not to make a list because I wanted this discussion that I'm having with you. I wanted this to be as incoherent as the Matrix Resurrections was. I don't understand the beginning. I don't understand this new Matrix. It doesn't make any sense. So when they go on lockdown at the end, Neo can stop the bullets, but he can't fly. Okay, inconsistent. I don't understand at the end. When Trinity's flying, or she's suspended there. She's not flying. She's suspended. She's hanging, from a wire and holding Neo up. I don't understand. They pull the things out of the second Matrix plugs. They pull the needles out. I don't know why they didn't do that earlier. I mean, they had Trinity. She'd already kind of made the decision to go with him for like 10 minutes. And so I don't know why they didn't pull the plug like 10 minutes earlier. It just doesn't make any sense. Because they pull the plug and there's no reason for them to pull the plug. It's not like she was like flying and she grabs the red pill. She's like holding Neo, right? And she's like, oh, I gotta do that. And then they pull the plug. I don't, See, I always thought that the red pill, I never thought that it was like a real thing. I always thought that it was like that you make the decision, but because they even say in the movie, they're like, well, doesn't she need to take a pill? They're like, well, she doesn't if her consciousness feels like she wants to be out of the Matrix. I just so weird. I don't know. So I never thought it was like a real thing, but now it's like the thing, right? Like they put code into the pill, into the red pill. And at the end, when they jumped off the building, because they were going down at a downward trajectory, like a jump and not a fly, because I thought, it's in slow motion. So you could do like it could lead to the jump that Morpheus does that Neo fails in the first movie. Okay, so that goes through your mind.
Aim for the bushes.
But since they're going at a downward trajectory, I'm thinking, I wasn't thinking at the time about the other guys where The Rock and Samuel L. Jackson plunged to their deaths. But I'm thinking about they're going down, and I was hoping that they would like do like a high angle shot and just show this huge mirror at the bottom, because it seemed early in the film like mirrors were the way that you get out of the Matrix now. They're like, we don't have to go to, I've got an exit point. And they're like, he's like, but it's really small. And it was the mirror in the bathroom on the train. And so, he's trying to fit through the mirror. So I was like, but then they didn't do that later. They didn't like go through mirrors somewhere else. And so it's just inconsistencies. Again, another Wachowski, someone else to look at this script that I think there were 3 writers that I saw. Another person to be like, hey, this and this don't match. And them to go, oh yeah. Oh, well, how do we make them match? Because you don't scrap the whole project. You just alter those pages where the inconsistencies are. But I guess in Hollywood, they forgot how to write. I don't know. The film has writers. Hey, John Wick 3 had 4 writers, and for 25 minutes, I didn't think that film was going to have a plot. Captain Donahue. So I don't understand this world. You've got, the way that they get out, when the needles are pulled, when they're not, powers that work sometimes and sometimes they don't. This whole new Matrix thing, the purge thing, was really confusing because it's like, they purged everything. Oh, except for me. And then they weren't going to purge my parents, but then he did purge my parents. And so I have been waiting for revenge. That was the moment when, the woman at the well, when she, when we learned that she was the little girl from I think the third movie. Uh, when the woman from the well is the little girl from the third movie, all grown up, because computer programs grow up. That was the moment that I thought, okay, this film officially is my nightmare. This is the nightmare that the Matrix, the idea of this program that everything is inside of, and that there's a reality over here. But inside the program, we can bring all these disparate elements from the other films. We can have a fight underground. We can have, the French guy look like one of the weird little nasty people in Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. We can have these things from the previous films because we've designed the film to be that way. It's like it's an apology for not being able to come up with new ideas. That's what, we're on a nostalgia train. And on this nostalgia train, we don't have a little bathroom mirror that we can jump out of. We're stuck on the nostalgia train, forever bound to Tokyo. Every film is like this now. There's no way I could go and see Scream 5, called Scream, where everything goes back to the house in the third act of Scream. There's no way that I can watch Spider-Man No Way Home, where Doctor Strange creates these multiverses that are an apology for not having new ideas. We just bring back, this villain from this movie and we drop him in our universe. And then we take this villain from this movie and we drop him in our universe. We take this villain from this movie and we drop him in our universe. And now we mix them all up and there we go. We got our new Spider-Man. We got our old Spider-Man. They're all together. We shake it up but we open the lid and bam, Spider-Man No Way Home comes out. I guess that's more what it's like. You shake it up, you don't open the lid. You break the jar open and it just kind of, right? So that's what's happening. That's what these movies are. The Matrix Revolutions. The Matrix Revolutions is a bad movie that ended a trilogy that started well. The Matrix Resurrections is designed to allow nostalgia to run the show. Star Wars: The Force Awakens was built on nostalgia. And The Last Jedi was a way to sort of subvert the ideas of nostalgia. And that's the only good thing I can say about The Last Jedi, because that at the time was the worst movie I'd ever seen until I saw The Rise of Skywalker, where The Rise of Skywalker is where you are stuck in the nostalgia and you can't get out. There's no way out because your fan base has hemmed you in because they saw The Last Jedi and they said, no, don't subvert our nostalgia. So then creative people were stuck. We're stuck in the nostalgia. This movie, it's not stuck in the nostalgia. It could have unlocked it, but the keymaster was probably purged. The fight scenes, in a way, I was shocked at how few fight scenes there were. They kind of overloaded the action into a couple different areas. The second film was, we have an action sequence, usually a chase, and then we sit down and talk about the plot. And then we have an action sequence, usually a chase, and then we sit down and talk about the plot. This movie had a lot of sitting down and talking about the plot. It had About an hour in, when we meet the new crew, it had the exposition dump that I was waiting for, where she's like, well, let me tell you about what we're doing here. And then 20 minutes later, they had another nostalgia dump, or the nostalgia dumps started at the beginning of the movie. Sorry. They had another exposition dump when we meet Niobe. Exposition really needs to be sprinkled like paprika, as Frank Higgins would say. You sort of sprinkle it throughout. You don't want just to have this big giant heap of exposition at the beginning so that you can understand the pieces. And you certainly don't want like a big thing here, because then you stall the forward progress. You want to sort of bring it in little piece at a time. And that again is where another writer can come in, someone else who can come in and challenge the ideas that are there. Not even challenge, but provide balance to the ideas that are there, so that you don't have these weird moments that occur. I'm not sure why Niobe changes her mind. She's like, oh, we're gonna lock Neo in a tower, which they jokingly call the Rapunzel Tower. And then that is resolved so quickly. Like they bring the ship up, like they weren't really stopping them. See, this whole movie is an exercise in an inability to allow tension to occur. It's like the scene where the bullet is going toward Trinity. Okay, so like this guy over here, he shoots a bullet, and the bullet's going toward Trinity, but it's going in bullet time, right? Which was the big special effect sequence from the first film. And so, the bullet's going toward Trinity's head, and there's nothing that Neo can do to stop it. And Neil Patrick Harris is just talking about, it's essentially an exposition dump where the Bond villain is explaining, the plot to James Bond. And at this point, James Bond doesn't have the ability to stop him. But the villain stops the bullet, thus giving the James Bond, the Neo, the ability to go ahead and stop him later. So this movie is about an attempt to control someone's mind, which they say that you really can't do, even though that's what they were doing for 60 years. I don't know. I don't like dumb movies. This movie certainly isn't smart. It was put together by smart people. I've seen stuff that these people have done before. They're not dumb people, but they did put together a dumb movie. When I look at 2021, The Matrix Resurrections is really kind of the end of movies of 2021. Early in the year, I watched Mortal Kombat. Halfway between Mortal Kombat and Resurrections, I watched Malignant. And then, 4 months later, whatever it was, now I've watched Matrix Resurrections. I enjoyed Mortal Kombat. I enjoyed Malignant. Those were both terrible movies. This movie was also terrible, but I did not enjoy it. It's no fun. And movies should be fun. Like my favorite movie of 2020 was Another Round. It's about 4 guys who drink alcohol. That's it. That's really all that happens in the film. Much like Neo, they all get their mojo back, but one literally goes overboard. I got to go to the well. I keep forgetting to go to the Lord of the Rings well, okay, where they're all out there. And somehow in 2021, they can't figure out how to get the green screen to work behind Jada Pinkett Smith so it doesn't look like she's on a stage in front of a green screen where, you've got sort of this warm light source, on the green screen, but then a different light source is on her. I just don't understand. After Lord of the Rings, everything in films that cost, $50 million plus, everything should look fairly realistic. The most nostalgic that I was thinking that the graphics in this film were on par with those in the first film, which is great. Because the graphics in the second film and the third film, they thought they could do more, but they really couldn't. They weren't quite as good as they thought they were. But this film could, at least for the most part, do what it was they were trying to do. Now, they were a big mess. The fight scenes were a big mess. There was so much going on that, you can't care about Neo and Captain Bugs Bunny and Morpheus, and we're watching like Jonathan Groff like make like a circle around everybody. He's kind of like moving around the group to fight Morpheus and other things to get to Neo. It's just you can't care about all those things at once. But then when we went underneath, when he sends Neo down into the area that looks like the basement from the first film, then the problem is the fight goes on too long. Like the fight with all the Agent Smiths on the playground in Matrix Reloaded. The fight goes on too long, so then we don't care, even though, we had the big fight upstairs with a bunch of people, and we don't care, we don't feel any tension or drama because there's too much going on. Now we have the focal heroes, but it lasts too long, so the tension kind of... And we know that Neo's indestructible because Neo starts doing things like boom, 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 right? And he sends Jonathan Groff with a big punch, and so it doesn't. It's like the end of the Avengers, where the Hulk grabs Loki and he goes boom, 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 and everybody else in the theater was laughing because it's funny, right? But it also doesn't make any sense because when Hulk's done doing this with Loki is lying there and he's like, ugh, but like his face isn't like all messed up, and his bones aren't shattered. He's not like, if he had banged Loki back and forth, and Loki was like a pile of skin with just pulverized bone inside of him, so he looked like a puddle of a person, like one of the sort of skin things that they find in Hellraiser 2. If that had happened, then there would have been tension there because something would have happened to Loki. Sure, maybe later his body would have reflated or something, and that would have been fun. But because he's just lying there and he's sort of dazed, it just doesn't make sense that should affect him. Because if he's doing this and, Hulk's just banging him around, but if Loki's sort of this indestructible entity anyway, he should be able to just stand up and be like, good try. Good college try, but we're going to have to keep fighting now. That's what this fight scene in the basement is like. It's like Hulk and Loki, where, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, you got two indestructible people beating on each other. Whatever. The movie was dumb. So those are kind of, most of the things that I have to say about The Matrix Resurrections. I cannot imagine, what else I could possibly say. We can't have any original ideas. We can't do anything new. If it's a franchise, stop it. All franchises just need to end. I did not like Star Trek Beyond. Most of my videos have been about Star Trek. I did not like Star Trek Beyond. It's my least favorite Star Trek movie. But I will say that for all the things that I don't like about Star Trek Beyond, it really is its own thing. It's Fast and the Furious in space. But aside from that, it's its own thing. You know, it wasn't trying to do the same thing. The Star Trek '09 movie, it tried to do its own thing. The Star Trek Into Darkness did not try to do its own thing. It just regurgitated Wrath of Khan in the way that Matrix Resurrections regurgitated all three of the previous films. But Star Trek Beyond tried to do its own thing, and I'm not going to watch it again because I really didn't like it. If a franchise can do that, if it can be its own installment, maybe. But for the most part, we should just scrap franchises too. There's nothing new. Terminator Dark Fate was just Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. I mean, beat for beat, they're almost exactly the same film, with several of the same things that occur. The Matrix Resurrections, whatever money it makes, will not do good film any favors. My favorite franchise now is probably Toy Story. If you look at Toy Story, they tried to do very different things with each film, but the characters are kept intact, and they're very moving. Each of those films moves you in a different way, not in the same way. If we're really going to look at how to build a franchise, it shouldn't be Star Wars that we look at. It shouldn't be Star Trek, which has the most films of any franchise, even though you could talk about original series, next gen, split, whatever. It shouldn't be Star Trek. It shouldn't be any horror films. It shouldn't be The Matrix. Toy Story is where we need to look at for franchises, because each film is so different, but the characters continue to grow, and they continue to move us. I can't think of a franchise film other than Toy Story 4 that I have found effective from an emotional standpoint. I mean, for a decade. I know that these movies now are going direct to streaming, and so we don't have to go to the theaters to watch things. I don't know how many more of these I can do, because I watch films like this, and I feel like movies aren't trying to move us anymore. They're just trying to be smarter than they were previously. And I think that that's a very 21st century thing, where it feels more like the movie is trying to be right than it is trying to be good. And so let's get back to making good movies and not trying to make movies that are right. The Matrix Resurrections was terrible. Now I'm done. You got anything to say? Captain Rodney says no. I'm Rodney Donahue. This has been the Matrix Cremations. You know what I should do? I'll look it up, and in editing, if I remember what it is, I'll put it right here. And if I don't, then I will just be pointing at my fireplace.